All right, let's dive right into a question that sounds like it's straight out of some wild science fiction, but it's becoming more real every single day. And that question is, where does your mind actually end?
Now, really, take a second and think about it. Is the boundary of you just your skin, your skull? For, centuries, that answer seemed pretty obvious, but what if it's not? What if you spills out into the world in ways you've never even considered?
For decades, some of the most visionary storytellers have been playing with this exact idea. The classic anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. It just brilliantly shows this tension, this split between the body we feel from the inside, our messy, private inner world, and the body that everyone else sees from the outside. That split? That's the first crack in the solid wall of the self. And then you've got Ghost in the Shell, which just pushes that idea even further. It basically suggests that our identity, especially when it's enhanced by technology, isn't solid at all. Nope, it's liquid. It flows, it merges, it extends way beyond our physical shell. It has no fixed boundaries.
And in the scarily prophetic serial experiments lane, we see what happens when the mind really moves into the network. Identity completely shatters. It becomes fragmentary. You end up with different versions of you existing in all these different places, totally untethered from a single unique body.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is all just fascinating high-concept sci-fi. But here's what's truly mind-bending. These fictional explorations are running in perfect parallel with a revolution happening in cognitive science, a revolution that's asking the exact same questions. See, these anime aren't just random stories. They grew out of a culture that's fascinated, maybe even obsessed with technology. They use these incredible visions of the future to make us question our present. They're tackling huge ideas like transhumanism, the limits of our bodies, and how technology extends us. But they do it through this really gritty, materialist lens. They're basically thought experiments for the very ideas that scientists are just now putting to the test. So to really get where science is going, we first have to understand the old model it's trying to break free from. Let's just call it the brain-in-a-box myth. For a long, long time, the main view in science was something called classical cognitivism. The easiest way to think about it is the computer metaphor. Your brain, that's the hardware. Your mind, that's the software. It takes in data from the outside world through your senses, it computes it, and then it produces an output. But the crucial part of this model is that all the thinking happens inside the box, inside your skull. This slide really just lays out the massive contrast. The classical view, right, it locks the mind inside the skull, and it treats the world as nothing more than an input device. But this whole new set of theories, called Fourier, completely flips that script. It argues that cognition isn't just in your head, it's in the dynamic dance between you and your environment. Suddenly, the boundary is porous, and the world isn't just a tool, it's an actual part of the thinking process itself.
And this brings us to the really exciting part, the science that gives us a whole new framework for understanding these unbounded minds. It's called Fourier cognition, and honestly, it's a total game changer.
Now, 4EA isn't just one idea. It's more like 4 interconnected concepts. So let's break them down. First, cognition is embedded. We're always offloading mental work onto the world around us, like when you arrange Scrabble tiles to see new words. Second, it's embodied. Thinking isn't just brain stuff. Your gut feelings, your posture, your whole body is part of how you think. Third, and this is where it gets really wild, it's extended. This is the idea that your mind can literally stretch out into your tools, like a notebook or a smartphone. And finally, the most radical idea of all, enacted. This says that thinking isn't something your brain does by itself, it's something that emerges from your constant dynamic interaction with the world.
So this idea of the extended mind, it's built on a brilliant thought experiment called the parity principle. Here's the core of it. If you use a notebook to remember appointments, that notebook is doing the job of memory, right? Well, if that exact same process happened inside your brain, we'd obviously call it cognition. So the parity principle just says, look, if it functions like cognition, it is cognition. That notebook isn't just a tool for your mind, it's an external part of your mind.
Now, this huge scientific shift didn't just happen in a vacuum. It actually taps into this really deep, long-running philosophical debate about the very nature of reality and identity itself.
Okay, so to oversimplify things a little bit, you can think of two big philosophical camps. One camp sees the world as a kind of text, focusing on language and ideas. But the other camp sees the world more like a workshop. It's all about real, material stuff and how things actually work and interact. The science of Fourier, It fits perfectly in that second tradition. It's a workshop view of the mind.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the science of 4EA is giving us real evidence for what some philosophers have been arguing for ages. Identity isn't some fixed, static thing. It's not an object. It's a dynamic process, one that's constantly being defined by its relationship with the world. To put it another way, you are not a noun, you are a verb. All right, let's bring this full circle, back to where we started, with those incredibly ahead-of-their-time anime stories, and more importantly, with your own life. Because this isn't about some far-off future. This is about right now. And this is where it all just clicks into place. Remember those anime? They're basically perfect case studies for 4EA. Neon Genesis Evangelion's whole conflict between the messy, inner lived body and the outer seen body, that's a masterclass in embodied cognition. Ghost in the Shell's liquid identity that flows into networks and cybernetics, that is the extended mind made totally literal. And Serial Experiments Lane's fractured self existing across both the digital and physical worlds, that's the enacted mind, an identity that only emerges through its interaction with the network. And look, this is not theoretical. Just look around you. That calendar on your smartphone, it isn't just reminding your memory. It is a part of your memory. The way you've organized your kitchen isn't just a backdrop for cooking. It's an active part of your cognitive cooking process. That navigation app on your phone, it has literally become your sense of direction. You are already a cyborg. Your mind seamlessly extended into the tools you use every single day.
And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty urgent question to chew on. We've established that our minds aren't just locked up in our skulls, they extend into and merge with our technology. So as our tools get smarter and smarter, as AI becomes more and more powerful, what does that actually mean for us? What happens to the self when a part of your mind becomes smarter than the part that's inside your head? That's something to think about.